You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caporelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. So welcome strategy creators to another great episode. And this one is going to be a really, really interesting episode because it's a question that I get asked a lot. And to be very honest, I didn't get a formal write-in on this, but I did kind of compile, a lot of the verbal that I got and that I get a lot. And I wanted to kind of put it into one summary question, which I'll ask here and try and address on this show. So the question, as I kind of interpreted it, is, Dear Strategy, do startups or small businesses really have the time to develop formal strategies like you talk about on the show? What do you suggest for these types of companies? So again, admittedly, I kind of summarized many questions that I've gotten on this from many different people. And the sentiment that I'm trying to capture here is, I do most of my training and teaching for large companies, right? Big Fortune 500, 100 companies, that type of a size. And the reason is mostly those companies will hire me to come in and teach their marketing teams or their product management teams or a team of their leaders how to put together strategies for the individual things that those people are managing, whether those are products or portfolios or markets or whatever. And these companies have a lot of those people, and so they can get them all together in one place and train them. And the other thing that these companies want as an output is not just the strategy, but a plan that's formal, right? That's written, that's presented. So we work a lot in those trainings on putting together a deck, a strategy presentation that can be communicated to the executives or whoever else so that everybody can be put on the same page. And in companies like that, having a formal plan that's written and communicated is really, really important because those companies are massive, right? And there needs to be alignment across a lot of different would-be silos throughout the organization. And so these plans are required to make sure that everyone comes on the same page so that you can actually execute on these plans. These presentations and plans are also required so that the executives and leaders can kind of put all of the strategies from the group that they're responsible for into one place and combine them into an overall business strategy. And then those can be combined into a business unit strategy, and those can be combined into a corporate strategy. So there's this layering effect that goes on, right? And you could only have that type of alignment and that type of grouping if these strategies are in a form that can actually be communicated and presented. Now, when I do this training, I would tell you that I still promote the fact that we shouldn't make it into a thesis, right? Strategies shouldn't be about, putting as much detail as you possibly can and having 600-page plans for every product or marketing strategy that you have. I still try and distill it into, the basic 12 to 15 kind of things that need to be communicated. So it's a half-hour presentation, maybe a 15-slide deck, that kind of a thing. But it's something that can be easily communicated. So not too complicated, but still something that's formalized and steps are followed. But the question really comes from, people who listen to the show and maybe have small businesses. I'm in a community of people that, like myself, own small businesses or founded small businesses. And they say, it's great insights, but really, we don't have the time to put together a formal plan. And I'm not sure that we even need to put together a formal plan because who are we putting a plan together for? Now, of course, if you're trying to get external investors and money and whatever else, then yeah, of course you would have to do that. But if you're just a small business owner and, you're self-funded and, maybe it's you and a few other people, do you really need a formal plan to do this? And I guess even an offshoot question to that is, even if you do need it, is it realistic? Like, do any small business owners actually do this? So I'm going to speak from a little bit of experience here because for the last 6 years before I founded Strategy Generation Company, I ran a small business. I was part owner for some period of time in that business, but I ran that business for 6 years. And that business was, 5 or 6 people at the most. And I always put together a formal strategic plan. Now, did I go as deep on the data as I might have in a corporate job where, I had to make sure that everything was rolled up against other product managers and rolled up to the leaders and rolled up for investors? No, probably not. But I definitely followed all the same steps, right? And made sure that I had the 12, 15 slides that I can communicate to the team. And even if the team was only 4 or 5 people, I wanted to make sure that I had some deck that I could align people around, right? Some presentation that I could say, here's what we want to do, and discuss it and make them a part of it. And what that did was a couple of things. Number one, it aligns everybody, right? Number two, it gets their buy-in and it gets them to have an open forum, right? So I didn't just say, this is it, and nobody give me any input. I made sure that I left room for discussion and input and buy-in and collaboration. And so at the end of it, the plan that we ultimately decided on was everybody's plan. And that, allowed us to achieve our goals, and the company grew as a result of that. So no matter how small your business is, I still think, even if you don't go as data heavy as you would if you're in a large corporation, that putting together a formalized plan of some type so you can communicate it to your team is really, really important. But then the question comes like, what if you're just one person? And, full disclosure, at this point, I just launched Strategy Generation Company. It's just me, right? Contractors I could draw on and things like that, and suppliers, of course, but right now it's just me. I don't know that it'll stay that way, but did I put a plan together for this? Yes, I did. Absolutely. But here's the full disclosure part. I did not put together as formal of a plan as I did when I had other people that I needed to communicate it to, right? Whether that was in my corporate world or in the other small business that I had, because in this case, it's only me. But I followed all the same steps, and I captured those in some document that I was comfortable with, so I can, keep track of it and so forth. Obviously, if I'm going to start a strategy training company, I better have some type of a strategy. But frankly, it didn't need to be quite as formal or as detailed as it would have needed to be if I had other people to communicate it to. And if I had even one more person in the company, I'd probably formalize it even more. But that doesn't mean that the same steps weren't followed, right? So I did another podcast called Making It Real. I did 60 episodes of that when I was with this other business. And my co-host Tate Tegmeyer and I, we interviewed all kinds of startups and product entrepreneurs and so forth to try and understand their process. And many of them were singular entrepreneurs, right? They didn't start with partners or teams and so forth. And what we found through that, and actually this caused me to modify the process that I teach with Strategy Generation Company a little bit as well, was that most of them did not follow a formal process, but they absolutely followed all the same steps that we teach in the formal process. So in the formal process, for example, we say that, you should do some analysis, right? So you should analyze your marketplace, you should analyze your competitors, and you should analyze your company, right? Well, that's exactly what these startups were doing, right? They did it in a little different format than putting together data and sheets and reports and everything else, but it was all the same stuff. They analyzed the market by understanding what their problem was that they wanted to solve. There was some need out there that caused them to think of a product that they wanted to solve a problem on, and they analyzed the customers to see if that was really a problem that needed to be solved. Then they went to see, are there competitors that have already solved it? Is there technology out there that someone else already has? And if there is there something that I could do differently? And then they analyzed their own selves, right? Well, like, how could I bring this to market? What resources do I need to do it? How do I get it manufactured? And you put a plan around that. So all of those same things that we asked companies to analyze or big corporations to analyze, they did the same thing. Maybe they did it in their heads. Maybe they didn't formalize it as much, but it was all there. Then when you get to the planning part, right, what we ask big companies to do is put together the goals that you want to achieve, put together some options of how you're going to achieve it, and then choose which actions you're going to actually take to go after it. Same exact thing, right? That these startups do. They put together a goal of what they want to achieve. They actually put together some options. Well, how are the different ways that we could actually do this? What are the different strategies that we can take? And then they choose what they want to do and they go and do it, right? So it might not be as formal or long of an action plan, but it's definitely the same process. And then you go and you do it. And that's the third phase that we tell companies to do, big companies to do, is go execute it, right? So make the investment, track that investment and track the results, and then refresh your strategy and do it all over again. It's exactly the same thing that a startup would do, and exactly the same thing that I'm doing with Strategy Generation Company. So again, because I teach it, of course, I've put together some slides and I've used my own process. So I formalized it more than maybe another singular entrepreneur would do. But whether you put it down on paper or not, and of course, I always think it's best practice to do that. But I guess the better way to say it is no matter how deep you decide to go, it's still the same steps, which means that, you shouldn't diminish the fact that you are doing a strategy just because you haven't put it down on paper. It absolutely is still a strategy. And really the only need to kind of put it down and capture it and so forth is if you need to communicate it. And once you get more than yourself involved, then yes, you do need to communicate it. And then you're going to need to put that down on paper. And by the way, the more people you need to communicate it to and the more people that you need to coordinate with, the more detailed you have to go on, what you put down on paper. And that's kind of how this whole thing evolves. So it's the same steps, just to varying levels of detail, depending on how big the company is or the people are, or how many people that you're actually collaborating with. And so that's really the way that it goes. So, back to the kind of question, do startups really need to do this? Yes. Do startups need to formalize this? Well, that depends on the size and how many people you're collaborating with. But whether you decide to formalize it or not, you got to take all the steps. So if you want to learn more about those steps, definitely go out to Strategy Generation Company's website, which is my website, right? strategygeneration.com. And there is a framework that you can download. Go to the resources page and you can download the framework that we have. You'll find some, I think, some pretty interesting correlations to what you're doing intuitively if you don't have a formal strategy. But make sure that you follow all of those steps. And of course, if you're interested in taking any of the training that we offer, you can find that there as well. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, if you're a regular subscriber or a listener to the show, thank you so much. If you're not a regular listener or subscriber and you liked what you heard, please go out and subscribe to us wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Hit whatever subscribe button is in front of you, because it definitely helps to other people to find the show. And also go visit our website at dearstrategy.net. You could submit a question to be featured on the show, and you could read the blog that goes with every one of these episodes. So we hope that you'll find some value there as well. While you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan. And we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.